Hey, I have an excuse. I just woke up. You didn't.
I actually did. So you take your excuse and keep it to your damn self. Yeah. Yeah, we're recording from all over the damn world right now.
That's right.
Got holiday travel on.
Yeah.
Wherever you go, we're still run by devils. Christmas in Demon Land. Do you hear this? This is a song. I don't know if you can hear that shit. Probably not. Boris made me get a Christmas track a while back.
I can barely hear it. I don't know.
I can't hear it.
No.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It's a leftover, unused Christmas track that Boris had me find for a gag that never occurred. So I feel like on this Christmas.
Was that for the beer commercial?
Yeah.
Sal and I were like making these weird like Christmas movie, like 90s Christmas movie commercial or trailers. Like it's like ding 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 ding. This Christmas.
Yeah.
Whoa, like that kind of thing.
Have you caught up? I think I watched the latest Lindsay Lohan Christmas movie.
I have not. No,
it was pretty good. If you're a fan of the genre, I'm not sure how many you've seen in your life, but I think I've seen maybe all of them. I'd like to see a full list to be sure about that.
Wait, but Lindsay Lohan has multiple Christmas movies?
Lindsay Lohan,
I guess it doesn't surprise me.
Every year gets together with okay, so I think the latest one wasn't Our Little Secret. All right, so I saw Irish Wish. These are mostly Netflix.
Irish Wish?
I did see Our Little Secret was the latest one. The last one,
Irish Wish is just a smoldering like crater where London was or something.
No, yeah, Lindsay Lohan returns as what's her name, Boudica, the spirit of Boudica, and lays waste to the vampires on the island. She's like she goes to Ireland for Christmas, and then there's like a ghost or something. I don't even know if that's a Christmas one. That's just kind of like a vaguely Irish pagan themed Lindsay Lohan film.
Isn't there a Christmas movie that was just filmed in Serbia that just came out, and it's like My European Christmas or something?
Oh, for real?
It's like an American movie, and they're in Serbia on like Kobani or something. I know it exists. I haven't seen it though.
Our kind of European Christmas.
Yeah. Our low budget European Christmas.
Yes. Yeah. No, this last one was pretty good though. She's like, she goes and visits her family, but like her old boyfriend is there with her partner and with his partner, and she's there with her partner, and there's like a classic kind of like, oh, what do we don't tell them situation because it's awkward. But then it turns out that every single person in the movie is fucking every other single person in the movie. So ultimately, Christmas is about essentially everybody trading relationships all at the same time.
Nice.
It was one of the better ones I've seen. Much better than Falling for Christmas, which is where she has amnesia because she hits her head or gets kicked by a horse or something, which, okay, pretty good start. But ultimately, I just really like them because she has this like great cast of like actors who never read completely straight, but they all play ultra straight characters. So I really enjoy it as a kind of a Christmas drag show of like what straightness looks like from the outside,
Nice.
I find them pretty fun. Highly recommend.
I mean, I might have to check this out then.
Yeah. It's good to be really fucking high. I would say that's probably a necessity.
Do you recommend Irish Dream or Kicked in the Head by a Horse?
Irish Dream all the way. Irish Wish.
Okay.
Irish Wish.
Irish Wish.
It's one of the stupidest fucking movies I've ever seen in my life. It's amazing. It's amazing.
All right.
Oh my God. It's almost racist against the Irish, and you don't get to see that often anymore. So
yeah, that's old timey.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. Anyway. Welcome to The Empire Never Ended. Lindsay Lohan Christmas special, The Spider, with Boris Brinson Ray.
Yes.
Hello.
Where Lindsay finds herself in a compromising situation with a group of well-connected men hiding a terrible secret.
Hint, they're not. These men are Nazis.
I would watch the shit out of that if that was a Christmas movie.
I mean, these particular ones were not really hiding it so much.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, well,
Like the guy from...
like the actors in Lindsay Lohan's film.
Well, yeah. Like the guy that we're talking about today who wrote like autobiographical or memoir text that was serialized in a tabloid, which was called "I Am an American Fascist."
Oh, yeah, pretty letting it all out there.
Yeah,
Yeah, your freak flag fly, baby.
yeah. Although I think that was a bit. I think he would be actually. I think that was probably the kind of yellow press editor of the newspaper who made that title. I think that H.K. Thompson, who's the guy that we're talking about today, would actually be offended by being called American. He wouldn't mind being called fascist or a Nazi. Nazi specifically is what he was, but he didn't like America, like Yockey, his friend.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Edgy.
Yeah.
Hip.
Yeah.
So these are the anti-Americanist American fascists.
Yeah. Well, he said like H.K. Thompson. At some point, he was like also collaborated with Madol, the leader of the National Renaissance Party, and was one of the people who turned Madol into this kind of pro-Soviet line. He also said for Madol that he was like an American firster, and then for himself said, "I was really like an America laster." Or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see this is going to be one of those funny episodes, Ray.
Well, yeah, I guess
These
so.
clever guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, with one-liners like that.
Yeah. So this is the Spider in New York City Part 2 episode.
Great.
We did Part 1, which is also kind of a sequel to the National Renaissance Party Part 1 episode that didn't
that was supposed to be the National Renaissance Party Part 2, but it became the Spider in New York City Part 1.
Yeah. Yes. So this is the Part 2 of that thing. In a way, it's Part 3 of the National Renaissance Party, but yes, we'll see.
Which, of course, would be Part 4 of the ANP.
Well, no.
So in Part 1/Part 2,
Yeah.
we talked about Frederick Weiss, right?
Yes.
Because I'm just reminding people because that was a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. So we are a little bit through these people talking about this concept of the spider, meaning this like post-war Nazi global network, mysterious, what it is it Odessa, does that exist, and so on. But we are really focusing on New York City and a few people there who were a part of this network. And Fred Weiss was an important one that we talked about, and much older than his friends H.K. Thompson and Yockey. And then H.K. Thompson, or his full name was actually Charles Harold Keith Thompson Jr.
Charles Harold Keith Thompson Jr. People, we've found the forename, the legendary mythical forename.
Yeah, it's an impressive one.
People said it was just a story, but here he is. He's been hiding. He's been hiding as a fucking 3-name this whole time, but in fact, he's a 4-name.
And he really is, like, in that sense, I think he's kind of I think American Nazis dream to be someone like this. Okay.
Yeah.
Because he allegedly was a part of the SS.
Okay.
And like a guy born in Jersey, living in New York City his whole life, and somehow he was in the SS.
Well, just fucking join the fucking Stadies then, you know?
Yeah.
You get the uniform, you don't have to leave.
Yeah. Well, he was also in the military, but maybe I should just start talking about him as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, H.K. Thompson is like one of these 3 guys in New York City who were in the 50s very much formulated these kind of pro-Soviet Nazi politics and influenced the National Renaissance Party in that sense, and turned its politics away from kind of a standard Cold War fascist politics of most American right-wingers at the time into this a bit strange pro-Soviet line. That last time we explained that this has its earlier history, this kind of politics by fascists, that there were like pre-Second World War, there were like fascists in Germany who wanted to have an alliance with the Soviet Union, had sympathies with Stalinism, and this is really the continuation of that. And as we'll see, it was very pragmatic and cynical in many ways. Also, as we mentioned last time, this didn't prevent them from having, racist views of Russians and so on. Although they kind of admired them at the same time and wanted an alliance with them. So, H. Keith Thompson was born in 1920 in somewhere in New Jersey, and he died in 2002. So, he lived much longer than his two friends, Francis Parker Yockey and Fred Weiss.
Yeah.
He came from I don't know exactly wealthy, but pretty, well-off family. His father owned a business, like it was like a printing business in Manhattan.
Yeah.
That Keith also worked in later on. Although he had a different all kind of white-collar jobs. Like he was in public relations, and he was like a corporate person. He went to Yale, graduated there. Although he had this kind of he looked down a bit on that school. He said that it was like a good place to learn how to drink or something like that.
He looked down on Yale.
Yes.
I'm a forename, sir.
Yes, exactly.
Did they let him into Skull? They didn't let him into Skull and Bones or whatever, and so
I don't know. Maybe he was a member. I mean, he was very well connected. So as a kid, he became a Nazi sympathizer. Okay, so for himself, he said that that he reached adolescence at the zenith of the Third Reich in the 30s, and that the Bund was very active at the time nearby in Irvington, New Jersey, and in New York City, and he just couldn't, not join. So he actually, as a kid, he joined the Bund, and maybe some other groups as well of that, Nazi German groups. He had also some German origin. And there was like a German part of the family, which was, I guess, had the last name Thompson. And one of those Thompsons was actually a German diplomat in the United States who was also like a German spy. And one of the people who, together with George Sylvester Viereck, developed these networks of German spies in the 30s in the US. And this was like a relative of his. So crazy. I think that through him and through Viereck, he very early on, as a child, basically joined the Reich.
Do you know if he went to like Camp Nordland or
I don't know
those things that were in New Jersey, the big Bund?
I mean, that's almost certainly he did, but I don't remember reading anything about it. But he says himself how it would be very easy for a kid walking around with his school books and so on, looking all innocent, to do useful things. Like, is what he so he himself later on, like talking with journalists and writers in the 80s and 90s, would like to tease them and imply that he did like some sabotage work for the Nazis and so on. And I think some people close to him who were historians, let's say from the Institute for the Historical Review, they actually found a document that confirmed that he was admitted to the SS and received the rank of major in July of 1941.
Wow.
Which, I don't know if that's an authentic document, but they had it. It had like a signature by Hitler, something like that.
Okay, but it's Hitler because he dots all of his eyes with little hearts. If you didn't see that, it was a forgery. All right.
So as a kid, he was a weird kid. He had like a an active correspondence with famous adults across the world, mostly like monarchs. So allegedly, he was in correspondence with Kaiser Wilhelm II, who he admired very much. And also a very active correspondence he had with Karl II of Romania, who was also from the German dynasty of the Hohenzollern. And this is something that continued later in adulthood. He would visit Karl II in Mexico often. They remained friends. He was also friends with a Nazi prince in Germany. This is August Wilhelm of Prussia, who was a general in the SA of the Nazi party.
Okay.
And through him, young Keith received, as a teenager, a signed photo of Adolf Hitler.
Wow.
Which he had in his house.
So he was tight with the SS and the SA.
Yes.
I mean, this means like, if assuming he was actually who he says he was in this time, he kind of had his post-war bases covered.
Yeah. So as I said, he was a part of this George Sylvester Vierek's kind of a German agent network in the late 30s.
Just a quick reminder to any new listeners, George Sylvester Viereck, socialite in the interwar period, also secretly a Nazi agent in the U.S. who managed to bring together a lot of the U.S. ruling class, but also U.S. Congress members into various Nazi propaganda schemes of his. Also invented the psychic vampire.
Was a poet, a novelist, and was like a bisexual, very much into orgies and so on, and had this large apartment in Manhattan, which a lot of people frequented, Nazis and non-Nazis alike, like the sexologist Kinsey and some other famous people would hang out there. Lawrence Denn's, Matt Cale, other people as well. So Keith said that the beginning of the war was very traumatic for him. And he says that after consultation with some individuals that he respected, he enlisted in the U.S. Naval Reserve, which is kind of interesting. I think he implies that basically it was an assignment. I mean, who he respected as a young Nazi in 1941 in New York City, and then decided like it was traumatic for him that the war started, and then enlisted. It's kind of interesting. He enlisted in 42, went through reserve officer training program, and then graduated from Yale after the war in 46. What is interesting that immediately after the war, he joined Admiral Byrd's Antarctic expedition, the famous one, Operation High Jump, and he served aboard his flagship USS Mount Olympus. This is interesting because this whole high jump operation has a place in ufology, especially ufology that connects with Nazi stuff. So there is this a tale in these circles that says that Admiral Byrd actually went there it was like a fake expedition. It was actually like they went there to conquer the Antarctic Nazis, and because he actually did go there with a large number of ships and I think a few thousands of military people.
Is that the theory that Hitler, went by submarine to Antarctica and set up his lair there or something?
I guess so, but the particular story about this thing told in ufology circles is that they went there and they were confronted by a force of Nazi aliens.
Hell yes.
And had a little war with them there. These were Nordic aliens who actually, somewhere it says that the aliens spoke in German, somewhere it says in Germanic accents, which is very
that's
funny.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And also, further evidence to support show mascot David Myatt's contention that any aliens that visit Earth will have had to have gone through his Pathe Mathos first.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Here we go.
And I guess a part of the story is I'm not sure what happened there exactly, what the narrative is, But apparently, at some point, the aliens showed Admiral Byrd and his associates an underground city that they have there, which is, I guess, Agartha or something like that. So I guess it's implied that these are Hyperboreans or something like that. This is what I said, that we'll talk a little bit about them.
Mm-hmm.
I never saw that in ufology, these people who are into this, they never mention H.K. Thompson. I bet that would be very interesting for them if they believe this happened, that there was an SS agent on the American side as well in this expedition.
Ray, are you saying what I think you're saying?
Well, are you developing new lore for this?
Is the first forename that we've found not even fully human? Is that what you're saying?
Oh,
that
okay.
There just so happened to be a human, like American SS agent named Thompson, just when they show up to face off against alien SS agents?
I mean, you can make like a good lore out of that, but I'm surprised that no one did.
Well, here we are. Here we are.
There was so much opportunity to do so.
Yeah, like they brought an SS guy in order, like, to appeal with Nazi aliens and say, okay, we have one of you here, and he now works for us. Let's make a deal. Let's go to Agartha and like sign some agreement between the Hyperboreans and the U.S. government, something like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
like even in the whole like X-Files extended lore there with the aliens, like they include a lot of this kind of stuff, but somehow don't. Really missed opportunity. Even the 1998 film Fight the Future has an underground Antarctic base, right? That's where Mulder rescues Scully in that like cocoon.
I didn't watch X-Files in a long time, but isn't this group that like made a deal with the aliens, aren't they mostly of German origin? Like Mulder's father even?
But Mulder's father's Jewish.
Oh, okay.
And that's like, they're kind of the outliers there. Yeah.
Okay.
And that's what will always ultimately make Mulder's dad kind of stand out from the rest of the consortium, I think.
Oh, okay.
Maybe. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So after the expedition, he remained in an officer in the Navy, and he worked in the Naval Personnel and Training Division in D.C. until 1948. And according to the Nazi Kerry Bolton, then he joined the Marines, where he was active for 2 years until 1950, and then was kicked out of the Marines. And I'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later. After that, he
did he try to eat their pet? Is it one of those situations?
It's a very strange story. I'm not even completely sure that I understand it, or I don't know much about it, but you'll hear it a little bit later.
All right, I await it eagerly.
After that, he returned to New York City and was involved in different businesses. He was a salesman. And as a salesman, he would visit Mexico and his friend King Carol II of Romania there. And he joined his father's printing business in Manhattan as a partner. It was called Cooper Forms in Manhattan.
Cooper Forms is the name of the firm.
Yeah.
Huh. Strange name.
Yeah.
So he would, people who were interested in Yockey, like Kevin Coogan and the guy who, I just forgot what is his name, like who wrote the book The Beast Reawakens. He's called Martin Ailey. They would speak in like 80s and 90s with H.K. Thompson. He would gladly speak with people about Yockey, even if he knew they were anti-fascist or whatever, and give them information and so on. And then he would tease them with this thing like, his role during the Second World War and so on. I think that to Coogan, or maybe it was to Martin Lee, I'm not sure, he wrote something like, "My file burning is proceeding well. You'd be amused to know that I burned this week blueprints, deck and cargo plans, and related materials pertaining to SS Normandy. They were yellowed, brittle, and disintegrating. But such old memories. At my age, only memories are left." So he's referring to here to the February 1942 fire that totally destroyed the SS Normandy while it was docked in New York City. It was a huge ship, like 83,000 tons, and one man was dead, and over 250 sailors, workers, and sailors and workers were injured. So Navy lost its largest auxiliary vessel in that fire. What's interesting is that the company, which was in charge of the workers and guards, in it, one of the organizers was a guy called William Drechsel, who was known because he previously was giving bail money to arrested Bundists. And he was in charge of the hiring security for this ship.
Interesting.
Interesting
story. Huh.
So H. Keith Thompson in the early 50s, he became a registered agent for the Socialist Reich Party and represented it in the US. The Socialist Reich Party was the first neo-Nazi, or actually post-war, let's say, Nazi party in West Germany, which was interesting because it had this kind of pro-Soviet line, or a de facto pro-Soviet line. It officially said that it wanted Germany to be neutral in the Cold War, but had direct connections with East Germany and received some funds from there as well. One of their leaders was this General Rehmer, who H.K. Thompson really liked and thought that he's the only guy, the only Nazi who remained in Germany that he really respected and supported and shared the political vision with him.
Yeah,
he liked more the Nazis who were not in Germany, who were in Argentina or Egypt or somewhere else. He thought more highly of them and was more in tune with them. But this guy and his party in Germany is definitely something that he supported, very officially. He was a registered agent for them. He also was officially a correspondent for the Der Weg journal published out of Argentina, the Nazi journal that we mentioned last time.
Right.
And when we talked about Yockey and so on. It's a very famous Nazi German journal published out of Argentina. And he was actually a registered UN correspondent for the journal and was able to go into the UN and visit a lot of places there where diplomats would hang out and talk to them and so on, which is pretty bizarre. And maybe I'm thinking because we mentioned that the National Renaissance Party had connections with some Middle Eastern diplomats who had Nazi sympathies and who would visit their party headquarters, meaning Madol's flat, or his mother's flat, actually.
His mom's house, yeah.
So it's possibly that, these connections were forged by H.K. Thompson, who was able to mingle among the diplomats in the UN in New York City. He was also a literary agent for a few people, like his friend, King of Romania, but also a bunch of Nazis, like the Hans Ulrich Rudel, who I think was a famous Nazi pilot or whatever. He wrote the book, and H.K. Thompson represented him and so on. It's interesting that he met, I think, both Weiss and Yockey through Nazi connections from abroad.
That is interesting.
He received letters from Nazis from different countries like Egypt and Argentina telling him okay, where you live in New York City, there is this guy, you should meet him and check him out and so on. So this is how he met Weiss in 1951, thanks to Hans Ulrich Rudel, who Weiss was in contact with, and then Rudel connected Weiss.
This kind of shows you how disconnected that scene was then.
Yeah.
Within New York, if they were,
yes,
getting messages from abroad to meet up.
Sorry. One thing I like about this story so far is that we've kind of been with the Americanists a lot so far, and this really feels like a separate branch of, let's call it evolution in this. Yeah. I'm curious to know where they've ended up, since we know much more about where the Americanists kind of ended up. I wonder where these guys end up.
Yeah. It's kind of also a bit strange that they were connected in this way through these Germans, because all three of them, Yockey, Weiss, H.K. Thompson, were active Nazis before the Second World War in New York City.
Right.
But I guess, they were of different age. Weiss was especially older and was like an actual German who was not, his English was not the best. And H.K. Thompson was very American, although he would hate that. and was much younger. So maybe this is the reason why they didn't know each other from before. And also, I guess, even though they kind of reorganized themselves very quickly, as we learned when we talked about National Renaissance Party after the war, I guess the war was, a pretty big deal for Nazis in America. So they needed some time to reorganize. So H.K. Thompson says, Rudell sent me a letter which he had received from Weiss, a curious mixture of German, Latin, and English, which Rudell didn't really understand. He asked me to set up a contact with Weiss and give impressions of his operation, i.e., what was he really about. First contact was by telephone, and thereafter he explains how they would frequently meet in different cafes in Manhattan and so on. One of them was that Yiddish place, which they liked also to meet with Yockey. And then he would also visit the Weiss farm in Middletown, New York, which he didn't like to visit because, as you remember, he didn't like Weiss's wife. He thought that she was crazy because she was talking to Wotan and so on. And also he thought that the farm was very dirty, and he didn't want to eat anything there because so if you remember that. So he, as we mentioned in the episode about Weiss, was one of the two people. It was Weiss and Thompson who were primary contacts for Yockey in New York City, and they became very close friends in the I guess in the 50s. Their contact was about Nazi stuff, but also Yockey would do some legal research on various war crimes cases for H.K. Thompson. H.K. Thompson was very much a part of this whole thing of Nazi solidarity for arrested Germans, imprisoned German Nazis after the Second World War, and not only that, but also later on historical revisionism and so on. And Yockey, as a lawyer who was actually connected to Nuremberg trials for some period, as we know, we talked about that a lot. Was of some
he
help.
A clerk or something, or
I think he was. I don't know what he was. I mean, he was a lawyer, but what he did, I don't know. But Thompson was very much a part of these campaigns of solidarity. But also there are other sides to what he was doing, which I'll mention a bit later in connection with these war criminals and so on. So Yockey helped Thompson draft a letter to the Secretary of State, Dean Acheson, concerning the treatment of convicted Germans in the Spandau prison. And he also Yockey gave Thompson legal advice about how he should become a registered agent for the Socialist Reich Party. In the early 50s, for example, at some point in 1952, actually, H.K. Thompson was what they call a floor manager for a big rally in Yorkville. This was a Nazi rally that I think we mentioned before, organized by various ex-Bundists. And it was important because they expected Senator McCarthy to address the rally. But because there was a lot of negative press, McCarthy in the end canceled. But Edward Frankenstein was there.
Yay! Forgot about Frankenstein. Ooh, I completely forgot about Frankenstein.
He's from the German-American Voters Alliance. Which is also an ex-Buddhist, I think, connected to Matt Cale. So Yockey would stay at H.K. Thompson's parents' house in New Jersey, in Chatham, New Jersey, and also later on in his Manhattan apartment. They would share a room in his parents' house.
Like the Odd Couple.
Yes.
Wonder which one was which one was the messy one? Which one was the fastidious one?
Yeah, probably Yockey.
Was both.
He was the messy one.
Yeah. He is a bit of a mess.
Yeah. So he said that Yockey would accompany him to New York City when he went to work, and they would split up and do their own things, and then they would meet late afternoon and took the commuter's train back to New Jersey. Later on, he moved to Manhattan, so they both lived there. And during that summer in 1952, they became good friends. One of fondest memories that H.K. Thompson has of this time was when the two of them would visit the Jersey Shore, which they enjoyed off season. And Yockey liked to walk the boardwalk late at night.
Sure.
And the beach too. So they talked all the time and enjoyed that very much. And sometimes they would strip down and swim at 3 a.m. And had a nice time. And he, especially Kit Thompson, remembers a time when they watched the sunrise over Atlantic. They're guard off, completely. And at the time, this moment, they discuss great men of the 20th century, such as Hitler, Mussolini, William II, Himmler, Franco, and also some lesser individuals like Perón, Stroessner, and emigre Germans like Rudel, Skorzeny, von Leers, Remer, who they admired.
While they're building like Wewelsburg Castle out of sand or whatever.
Exactly. Yes, and they also at the time they mourned the Judification and internalization of the world.
I assume they were naked the entire time.
Well, I mean, yes, it is implied that there was like a sexual thing between them.
Well, obviously, did you hear what they talked about? I mean, I'm getting a little hot under the collar here. Come on.
Yes. Yeah.
This really is actually a Lindsay Lohan film. I thought that was a non sequitur earlier, but I mean, I had no idea. This is straight up from like the Netflix version of it. Shit. This is what Netflix will look like in fucking for the next 10 years or so.
I said it already in the Vice episode, but I can repeat it again. I think that H.K. Thompson himself said how both Yockey and him and Weiss didn't really see themselves as American fascists or part of the American right wing, especially, but as German agents operating behind enemy lines, which is important, I think, in how we view them. So in the fall of '52, H.K. Thompson introduced Yockey to Vierek, and Vierek called Yockey at the time the Orange Boy because of his pseudonym Ulrich Varange, which I guess is also pronounced Varange in French or something like that. That sounds like orange.
Okay.
As we said, Vierek maintained his political salon in his apartment, and Lawrence Dennis would often be there. And H.K. Thompson mentions Lawrence Dennis in a very good, positive light. He said Lawrence Dennis was a part of my crew, basically.
I can see that completely. Yeah.
I don't think there's anybody that didn't mention Lawrence Dennis in a positive light from this time period.
They all
seem to really love him.
Yeah. He liked him a lot, and they would meet often in the Harvard Club for lunch. And he was really impressed. He doesn't like American right-wingers, but he liked Lawrence Dennis.
Lawrence Dennis, just to remind people, early American fascist theorist, actually one of the few that was around in his time, but also had a crazy life, beginning as a young black child who was like an evangelical sort of messiah type. He
was a black prophet. Yeah,
he was a black prophet to one of the most well-recognized and sort of elite voices for fascism and in America, essentially passing as a white man for most of his life. A very interesting story. We covered it on the show. Too much I get into now, but rest assured, this is interesting company. I mean, between somebody like Dennis, somebody like Vierek. I mean, these guys are their like has not been seen since. I will say that in American fascism.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So Thompson himself liked to say how Vierek's apartment scene was very much about sex and orgies and so on.
Yeah,
sure. And it's interesting that later on he would inherit from Vierek his little black book. So that exact phrase is used, which is interesting.
Okay,
and which was very useful to H.K. Thompson. It is said because it had a list of names of influential American politicians who, Vierek paid off and gave them a lot of money up to the point of Pearl Harbor. and that gave him some like money. He was interned after that.
Yeah.
As a non-Nazi agent.
Yes.
But had these connections. But I'm also thinking, Little Black Book and the thing that, it was like kind of orgy sex oriented, according to H.K. Thompson. It has like some Epstein,
It feels, it's got a little blackmail-y vibe to it, doesn't it? It's
yeah. Because, they were very like, because they were like very, sexually liberated Nazis. Like
yes.
Vietek was bisexual. H.K. Thompson, it is said that he was gay. Matt Cale was allegedly also gay, and the lover of Eustace Mullins, who was a part of this thing. So, it's possible that these things were used to blackmail influential people who would hang out with Vietek and so on. It was Thompson who introduced Yockey to Hazel Guggenheim of the wealthy Guggenheim family.
Okay.
And then they became lovers. It is implied that Yockey was a kind of a gigolo. Hazel wanted. He was.
We called him. Didn't we call him a Nazi gigolo as a subtitle of one of our episodes? We did.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he was a gigolo. I think we did mention it. Yeah.
He's just a gigolo. Everywhere I go, talking about the Soviet Union.
Yeah. So Hazel was friends with Thompson, and she was fascinated. Like she wanted to meet a young, handsome fascist. She was fascinated by that idea.
Okay.
So he introduced her to Yockey. Yockey was also into BDSM, which we mentioned before.
He wrote BDSM fiction.
Yes. And so when he kind of disappeared and they didn't know where he was, both Weiss and H.K. Thompson joked that he maybe had like a BDSM accident and died or something like that.
That's not fucking funny.
They were kink shaming him.
Yeah.
Yes. Actually, they didn't. Like H.K. Thompson was like, he didn't have a moralistic view of any of that. He was like, that's fine, whatever. He was a good guy.
Yeah, we just straight up want power.
Yeah. So, there are because I use different sources, there are different versions of same events, and I will mention a few different versions.
Yeah, cool.
One was that H.K. Thompson came under the FBI scrutiny because of his role as the American agent for the Socialist Reich Party. And he would say how he was, tailed by feds all the time, and they would appear at events that he organized, of course. I mean, he's a very active Nazi and also an agent for a foreign party. That's it's not unusual at all. He's also the source for the information that Yockey did a job for the Czechoslovak intelligence in the 50s, that he served as a courier and transported a package to Vienna, which was allegedly a meeting place for pro-Soviet intelligence and the Nazi network. What is interesting is he was definitely a kind of a troll and a manipulator and provocateur in some sense. So after Yockey left New York City, Thompson prepared and published this kind of memoir text. I think this is the I'm an American Fascist one, but I'm not sure if that's the one. In which he exposed the communist infiltration of the U.S. right, which is pretty ironic because that's the whole thing was kind of one of his project was this connection with Stalinists specifically,
right?
Yes,
but it is alleged that he did this on purpose to take some heat, Fed heat of himself. And so he portrayed it as that he was duped by Yockey and Weiss, who are Soviet agents, and so on.
So just to break that down, in that hypothesis, right, in that version where he's doing it to get the feds off his scent, and I find this plausible because he's saying that look, I'm a fucking Nazi SS motherfucker, but the feds think I'm a commie, so I got to be careful.
Yes, I think you're right. I'll come back to that later on.
So then he just deflects and says, "Well, actually, the U.S. right is infiltrated by commies."
Yes,
and the fucking feds are
presumably,
"Oh goddamn!"
And what year is this?
I think in 52.
So this is even pre-John Birch Society.
It's early 50s for sure.
Nice.
So allegedly he did this in coordination with both Yockey and Weiss. It was not like he was backstabbing him or something like that. Like I mentioned this before, that Weiss and Thompson spread the rumor that they're like in conflict, fighting, and so on. And even like the ADL bought that thing and published how Virginia Johnson, which was one of Yockey's lovers, and Weiss like paid some money to a gangster to beat up H.K. Thompson because he knew too much about Yockey or something like that. This is something that a rumor that they spread themselves and then ADL spread it for them is alleged.
You know what? I'm glad, Boris, you brought up the kind of timeline relative to John Birch and this idea of the communist infiltration mania, because now that you said that, it does begin to feel like that whole overwhelming fetishized version of that anti-communist paranoia that took over in the 50s kind of sounds like what happens when some sort of like generational trauma turns into a mythos, back when the actual Nazis and actual Nazi intelligence was being they were being run in circles by fucking Soviet intelligence and stuff like that. I feel like that original trauma has now become a religion of sorts because these dudes didn't go away. Obviously, they just helped shape the new, outlook for American intelligence,
Right. Yeah.
They brought it with them, that fear that they still have from the old days.
Well, know how to use that fear, right? In this case, because they're doing a deliberate disinformation campaign.
No, I feel like this guy, Thompson's, he's like a step above your rank and file, guy, I think. He sounds like he's got a plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, he definitely is like an intriguing figure as how people describe him. He's very like mild-mannered, very chill, He's not a guy who like gives fiery speeches or at all.
Right.
He has a very ironic kind of cynical outlook. Seems that he has friends of all kinds, and is well connected. You would never, I think if you saw him that he's a Nazi or something like that. But he's a Nazi, very, very much so. So yeah, it's kind of intriguing figure.
Hold on, would you, Ray, personally look at him and know that he was a Nazi?
I don't know. It's possible, because we have some, we read a lot about Nazis, so we have a different view of what a Nazi looks like than most people, I guess.
Actually existing Nazis, we call them.
Yes, I think he would say things that we would understand from the way he talks and refers to certain things, that he probably is a Nazi. Although he's very, very mysterious. I will get into that later on. Even more mysterious than he sounds up to this point.
All right.
So an important guy for this so-called spider network is a guy called Werner Naumann, a German who joined the Nazi Party in 1928 when he was 19. In 1933, he was an SA Major General. He worked in the Ministry of Propaganda, Goebbels' ministry.
Yeah.
In 1937, and was the personal adjutant to Goebbels. Then he spent 3 years serving in the Luftwaffe and the Waffen-SS, and then he returned to the propaganda ministry in 1944. During the siege of Berlin, he led a militia battalion defending Berlin, and Hitler himself, in the last days in the bunker, appointed Naumann to be the successor of Goebbels as the Minister of Propaganda.
Okay.
And after the war, he was active in the Bruderschaft, one of the Nazi networks.
Quite a CV.
So he had a circle of Nazis around him. That was the Naumann Circle, that was charged in 1953 for organizing a secret Nazi cell inside the German Liberal Party, the FDP. They basically tried to do a Nazi takeover of that party, which I think happened in Austria, because their sister party in Austria is now the neo-Nazi party, which started as a kind of a liberal party. The Free Democrats, they're called the same, I think, in Germany and in Austria, or very similar to that. So both Weiss and H.K. Thompson were Naumann's collaborators. They were in contact with this guy. Okay, so this is a quote from the Dreamer of the Day, Kevin Coogan book about Yockey. And this is Thompson saying something to Kevin Coogan. The Nauman Circle was just that, a loosely organized group of advisors, each working on different projects, but all feeding ultimately to Dr. Naumann. My essential contacts were Dr. Karl-Heinrich Peter, Dr. Heinrich Maltz, Dr. Gerhard Krüger, Colonel Hans-Ulrich Rudel. Another facilitator was SS Major Kurt Gross. I gave Frank Yockey introductions to all of these people, asking that he be given any assistance possible and put to work politically where possible. Thompson said that my own work for Maltz Peter involved not mere research in the US, but extensive use of governmental files. For Peter particularly, I researched deaths of German Jews in the US and Canada, calling such publications as Aufbau in New York City, and even with false identity, YIVO and similar Jewish archives. Peter also involved me in legal cases. One was that of Gestapo RSHA, which is the counter-espionage agency, had Walter Huppenkotten, a Gestapo official indicted for his work in investigating the bomb plotters who tried to kill Hitler. I got into specific files in Washington and not only got the desired info, but was able to remove certain material and destroy it, he says. So these people that he mentions, like Maltz and Peter, they were like a part of Naumann Circle, but they were some of the originators of the the Holocaust denial movement after the Second World War. A lot of this research was also in service of that.
Interesting.
But not only that.
So like, for instance, like the Institute for Historical Review would use them as sources? How do they fit into that?
I think they kind of started the movement and the whole, the rationale for the denial of the Holocaust. The pioneers, I would say.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, then Willis Carto must have known about them, right? Or
for sure, yeah.
For sure, and was probably even responsible for republishing their works.
Yeah.
Early on, I wouldn't be surprised at all.
I'm wondering about where these people link up on these two kind of genealogies. That seems like a point.
I mean, sure. they have a direct connection through Thompson, because Thompson was closely affiliated to the Institute for Historical Review. He addressed their conferences and so on, but he also looked down on them. Like he would say things like, "Well, these people now who promote Yockey, they hide his pro-Soviet line and so on." So he probably thought of himself as not only the real Yockeyan, but some kind of equal to Yockey in formulating this kind of politics, and probably didn't like that, Liberty Lobby is not portraying Yockey in such a way.
Imagine having as a personal goal being equal to Yockey.
Yeah.
Can we not aim a little higher?
Well, I mean, for them, this was as high as it gets.
Oh man, that's bad.
Yeah.
Thompson was also friends with an industrialist from Chicago that we mentioned in the Vice episode called Arthur Kögel, who was, I guess, an owner of a coal company. And he was also Naumann. This Kögel guy was also in the Naumann Circle, an industrialist from Chicago, who was also financially supporting post-war Nazis in their publications all over the world. We mentioned in the Vice episode how Weiss had this connection with Egypt, both with Nazis there, but also like pro-Nazi Egyptians and parts of the political establishment. So this also had a connection with Thompson as well. This is another quote from Thompson. Following the removal of Perón in 1955, the regime in Argentina fell into the hands of leftists and moderates. This was not a favorable development for the Dürer circles. Dürer Verlag was the publisher of Der Weg. And they began to receive governmental attention. They gradually disbanded. Von Leers went to the Middle East to his wide range of Arab contacts there, and he ultimately joined the Nasser forces there. receiving an appointment to the Bureau of the Egyptian government dealing with anti-Zionist, anti-Israeli propaganda. Von Leers was recognized master in this field. During the process, I asked von Leers if he could find a spot for Yockey, not a regular desk job, which Yockey would never take, but a freelancer in the propaganda field and possibly as a sort of courier communicant facilitating the work of von Leers.
So that's called a mail boy, I think.
Yes. So Thompson had this strange connection, although maybe not so strange as we'll see, with like someone that they call a leftist journalist. I think this means like a liberal, a guy called Lyle Stewart, who was publishing this kind of tabloid newspaper called Expose, where Thompson published this text, "I'm an American fascist." And they had a kind of a strange collaboration that started, I think, when Lyle Stewart attacked the newspaper columnist Walter Winchell in his tabloid Expose. And he denounced, Lyle Stewart denounced Walter Winchell for his support of McCarthy, Roy Cohn, and J. Edgar Hoover. And he was also mad at the ADL for secretly meeting with McCarthy. And also, he claimed that the ADL, this guy, Lyle Stewart, was secretly financing anti-Semitic publications like The Common Sense. The Common Sense was also affiliated with the National Renaissance Party. And he exposed this guy that we mentioned last time, Sandy Griffith, who was this kind of weird, probably intelligence-connected pre-war or during the Second World War guy who was allegedly an ADL operative, and according to Sandy Griffith, was kind of trying to encourage Nazi groups to be active, give them money, so that the ALDL could have a job in suppressing them, something like that. It was first, this thesis was published by this guy, Lyle Stewart, a liberal, or they called him, leftist journalist. And so this whole line of writing made him like some fans among American fascists. One of them was Gerald L.K. Smith, who wrote to Lyle Stewart, was very impressed by what he wrote and said, okay, we differ in everything, but I agree with this thing that you said about ADL and so on. And Lyle Stewart, I guess, had some kind of a fascination with American fascists, like some liberals have, with like sophisticated fascists and so on. So he wanted to meet a real American fascist, and this is how he met Thompson in his office. And as Thompson says, what connected them was a deep hatred for the system, is how they pronounce it.
I mean, Lyle Stewart, I think, was responsible for publishing the first edition of the Anarchist Cookbook.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Well, then in that case, oh shit, then also republishing fucking Turner Diaries.
Oh, yeah, maybe.
Okay. So definitely working then for the cops.
Yes. Yeah, he republished Turner Diaries, yeah.
So at some point, Lyle Stewart had some problem with the King Farouk of Egypt in 1962 because he published a memoir of a certain madame who wrote how King Farouk would frequent her establishment and so on. And then the king sued Lyle Stewart or threatened to sue or something like that. And then his friend, H.K. Thompson, provided Lyle Stewart with a Nazi file from his contacts in Egypt on King Farouk that contained compromising photos and so on. And then the king abandoned this lawsuit against Lyle Stewart.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll come back to the Lyle Stewart story. But so allegedly, H.K. Thompson was also a part of a Nazi conspiracy I think in 1953, to free Admiral Dönitz from prison.
Wow. Okay.
So this was coordinated by Hans Ulrich Rudel, and the main connection in the U.S. That was a part of this plot was H.K. Thompson, and I think Yockey was also a part of it. So they thought, like a lot of Nazis, that the Admiral Dönitz was a legitimate president of Germany,
Right.
because he was appointed to be that by Hitler before he shot himself. So they actually wanted to free Donitz and take him to a secluded place somewhere that he would be safe, and proclaim a legitimate German government in exile, something like that.
Do you think that the Gehlen Nazi intelligence group that at that time was working under the umbrella of American intelligence, do you think they were looking at them and just being like, guys, you don't get anything about what we're doing here? You do not get it. Like we're good. We're good people.
Yeah. I think that Thompson had some genuine loyalty to a lot of these Nazis. Especially the ones who were a part of the regime and were appointed by Hitler to certain posts himself, and remain loyal till the end. I think he idolized them as a Nazi kid in New York City, and really wanted to help them. In 1953, Thompson announced his ambitious project, which was the establishment of the American Committee for the Advancement of Western Culture. He did this to try to establish it together with Kurt Mertig, the first leader of the National Renaissance Party, with James Madol, the ultimate leader of the National Renaissance Party, with Edward Frankenstein as well.
The ultimate name of the National Renaissance Party?
Yes. Well, he wasn't in the National Renaissance Party. He had his own group. There was also an honorary advisory staff for this committee, which had the German Nazi-informed leader Wolfgang Sarg, A. Raven Thompson from the Union Movement, Mosley's post-war fascist party in Britain, then Dr. Gerhard Kruger of the Socialist Reich Party, and from South Africa, Hans Oswald Pirov. Weiss said of this committee that it was a high policy planning group for the coordination of racial nationalist activities in America, Europe, Africa, and Asia. Thompson abandoned this idea because he was kind of disgusted by the infighting among the leaders of the American fascists, I think, and gave up on the whole idea.
This is very interesting. I was just outside talking about it on the balcony, and about how many pieces are fitting together at a time that we kind of need them to. Really?
Yeah.
This is a very satisfying puzzle piece. It's that just fits right in there.
So in Lyle Stewart's expose, he published this text, I'm an American Fascist, and he wrote how, the communists are infiltrating nationalist groups and so on. We already talked about that. We mentioned before how, they had this pro-Stalinist line, but then when they would talk about communists in a negative light, they would actually mean groups like the ADL and the non-sectarian anti-Nazi leagues and so on. They would label as communists, people who were their enemies for this and that reason, or Jews in general.
Right. Yeah.
And the people that they call Trotskyites. So we talked about a lot about that in the Vice episode. I don't need to go through it again. But there is this Nazi idea that we mentioned a lot of times, talking about cultural Marxism and so on.
Right.
And which is these Nazis who wanted an alliance with the Eastern Bloc also had this line, but they would separate good communists, which is Stalinists, who are not actually communists, who are nationalists and anti-Semites, from the bad ones who are these propagators of this so-called cultural Marxism. And back in the day, that would be identified with Trotsky and his followers. Later on, it was more identified with something like the Frankfurt School, but it basically means the same thing. It means Jewish communists who want to destroy the white race, family, and so on. But I'm saying even these people who are pro-Stalinists also have this talking point. This Lyle Stewart connection, a big part of it is this story about this enigmatic Sanford Griffith, who allegedly was an ADL agent who tried to bait them into doing I guess, anti-Jewish things, Nazis, but was also an agent for the ADL. I don't know. It's a confusing story. I don't know what to make of it. In the Vice episode, I said that Sanford Griffith was also like Vice's neighbor and had like a friend relationship with him. So I don't know if this whole thing is another like troll by them, or they had an actual conflict with this person. I don't know what was going on there. But it was also a cause for like an inter-Nazi fighting at the time, like D. West Hooker, who we mentioned many times.
Great name.
Also a New York City-based Nazi who was the mentor to George Lincoln Rockwell. At one point, he owned like a Pepsi, a 7-Up franchise in Italy. He wrote a text attacking Weiss as a communist agent, financed by this guy, Sandy Griffith of the ADL, and so on. So it's interesting. So he's attacking Weiss, who is an ally of Thompson, who's also writing how this Sandy Griffith is working for the ADL and financing Nazis. But all of these Nazis that are supposedly financed by the ADL are the ones that specifically Thompson supports, like the National Renaissance Party, and his friend Weiss.
You see, David, this is how you do a labyrinthus mythologicus. This is how you're supposed to do it.
Yes.
This is genuinely confusing. Like, they did a good job here.
So both Hooker and Frankenstein were spreading these rumors that Weiss is financed by the communists. Is this real or not? I don't know. But at this point, like, Thompson did defend Weiss from these allegations, which also so it's very confusing what the fuck is going on. And Weiss also accused Hooker as having his own connections with Sandy Griffith, that he would often meet him for dinner and so on.
This is the real Nazis of the Jersey Shore. This is great.
Yes, exactly.
I can see them all living on the same street, you know? And like Hooker's like peering through the curtains out there at fucking Thompson and
what's Thompson doing over there? Yeah. It's a kind of like a rear window situation. Somebody's just like looking with the telescope, and
I want it to be straight reality TV, and then I want them all to meet, you know, once an episode with like fucking white wine spritzers and hash it out.
So using LeBlanc publications of Weiss, Thompson, and Yockey would publish various pamphlets. It's difficult sometimes to actually determine who wrote what. Probably a lot of them were written by all three at the same time as co-authors to some degree. In one of the common pamphlets, Weiss and Thompson attacked the idea that the oppressed Russian masses wanted to overthrow the Bolshevik yoke. In fact, what they said was that the Russo-Mongolian masses now took over the rule of the Soviet Union and brought forth the new world of communism as the climax of its creative activity. Some bullshit like that.
The Russo-Mongolian masses.
Yes.
And I guess creative activity being that sort of the cultural imperative of whatever, the Yockeyan organism.
I guess so. Or Spenglerian, maybe.
Spengler, yeah.
So, according to them, Russia was a pre-Israelitic pagan society.
Pre-Israelitic pagan society. I learn a new word every day on this show.
Yeah, I mean, they want to say that they're not ruled by the Jews, unlike America. I think they also want to say that Christianity is Jewish, probably.
Right.
I see. Ancient Trotskyites.
Yeah. Thompson also maintained contacts with the American Communist Party, but also with Soviet diplomats. So one of these people that Thompson knew was a guy called Valerian Alexei Zorin. So Zorin was a very important official of the Soviet Union. He was at different times an ambassador to Czechoslovakia, to West Germany, to France, and he was also deputy minister for foreign affairs, I think in 52 and 53. So Thompson claimed that he met him often and was in contact with him. And how he portrayed why was that he pushed for the release of German prisoners of war and also for better imprisonment conditions for them. So there is definitely some truth to this, because later on, some of them, these German Nazis, acknowledged that Thompson somehow helped them while they were in prison. Like even Admiral Donitz personally wrote to H.K. Thompson to thank him.
Wow.
Others did as well. And it seems that their conditions in prison actually were somehow improved through him. He was also raising money for a lot of Nazi causes. So Thompson had connections with pro-Stalinist intellectuals in America and other states in the Americas. So one of the people that he was connected with was the artist Rockwell Kent, and also the Mexican artist David Alfaro Siqueiros, who was a Stalinist. Had a direct connection with them. Thompson was, for example, active in legal defense of Siqueiros when he was arrested by the Mexican government. And that artist, he actually provided a safe house for Yockey when Yockey went to Mexico. It was like a Stalinist. So Thompson was a supporter of Batista in Cuba, and possibly even was providing guns for the Batista regime. He's actually acknowledged in Batista's memoirs. Batista mentions H.K. Thompson there.
Wow.
As a friend. But later on, H.K. Thompson would have, he was still a Batista supporter, but also kind of a supporter of Castro as well. As long as he was anti-American, H.K. Thompson liked that.
I can think of quite a lot of people right now that are very much in the public eye that are kind of taking on similar positions. These the old left that suddenly likes Trump. These kind of guys.
Sure.
Siqueiros, by the way, famously also tried to kill Trotsky in Mexico City.
Yes, the first aborted attempt was organized by him. I mean, of course, Nazis like this would love that guy who tried to kill Trotsky.
It fits in perfectly with their worldview there. Yeah.
And also, an interesting thing about Lyle Stewart that we talked about. You know what? He was a New York, secretary of the New York branch of what organization? It was the what is called Fair Play for Cuba Committee. Okay, so Lyle Stewart doesn't look good for him. I mean, if you remember, Ed Fields was friends with a local Fair Play for Cuba committee, chairman or whatever. And of course, we know that Lee Harvey Oswald was affiliated with that group as well. So it seems it's a very, very fake leftist group, that one, because they're friends with Nazis everywhere. And interestingly, Thompson was also the literary agent for Lee Harvey Oswald's mother. Was friendly with her and tried to help her when she was selling Lee Harvey Oswald's letters and so on.
All right.
So in the FBI files, it says that H.K. Thompson visited Cuba in the 50s, but he denies visiting it. Always denied that he did. Although his friend Lyle Stewart did visit Cuba and probably did some work on Thompson's behalf there, because he was trying to meet a Cuban journalist, Rodriguez, who was in contact with Yockey when Yockey went to Cuba, but Lyle Stewart was not able to find him there. Thompson always insisted that Yockey should not be confused as a part of the U.S. right. He insisted that Yockey detested them, as did Thompson, and that he was a part of the European Liberation Front, which Thompson defined as a group doing a job for Moscow among European fascists.
Interesting.
No. So Keith Thompson claimed that he was friendly with a number of people in East Germany who were previously a part of the SD, one of the Nazi intelligence agencies that allegedly he was also a part of when he became part of the SS, because SD was affiliated with the SS. And that now they were part of the East German regime and were sympathetic to Thompson's Nazi circles. So he would say this to the journalists in the 90s who were trying to figure out who Yockey was and so on. He also had a contact with the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem. So he said, I did a couple of jobs for him, getting some documents from files that were otherwise unavailable. As I said, Thompson had some connection with Willis Carto. He would occasionally write for Spotlight, the Liberty Lobby newspaper, and also for the Journal for Historical Review. He refused to join Liberty Lobby board. He was invited by Carto because there was a loyalty oath. And he said, I took one oath of loyalty in my life, and that is all I shall take, referring to his membership of the SS.
The SS, of course.
So, nevertheless, he spoke in the gathering of the Institute for Historical Review in California in September of '83. And very classy among Nazis, then freely he said, if in the end the Holocaust did take place, then so much the better.
Oh my goodness.
Class.
All right.
Yeah. In '87, there was an Institute for Historical Review meeting in Irvine, California, and Thompson arranged for one of his idols, Otto Ernst Remer, to appear at that gathering. So they actually had a real Nazi there.
Yeah.
And Remer made another classy joke there. He took a cigarette lighter and put it under his nose and asked the people, what is that? And then he said, this is a Jew nostalgic for Auschwitz.
Damn.
What a piece of shit.
Yeah. This is like a very kind of classy looking, open-minded Nazis. And of course, this is what they are.
I hate them.
Yeah, of course. So Thompson was very excited in a positive way when he heard about the Oklahoma City bombing.
He's just hitting all the fucking notes, isn't he?
Yeah. He said that the news delighted me. Violence is the only thing these people understand. But later on, he changed his opinion when he realized that the U.S. government was involved in it to discredit the far right.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
He's just the galaxy brained among the galaxy brained of the American Nazis, isn't he?
Yeah. So I'm going to finish the episode by going through some of the things that Kerry Bolton, the Nazi from New Zealand, wrote about Kit Thompson. I think he idolizes him a lot. He likes him. Yeah. Bolton, who was in the past affiliated with the Order of Nine Angles and is now one of the two biographers of Yockey, is kind of fascinated by these New York figures. Like he wrote about Madol, he wrote about Weiss, he wrote about Thompson. He has a huge book about Yockey. What is the most interesting thing that Bolton writes is that a part of that, by the way, Thompson's father was a local post commander of the American Legion, is what I found. Kerry Bolton's writing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Of course.
Is how much early on he had connections with the left, meaning Stalinists, or not necessarily Stalinists, but probably people that the Soviet Union was interested in supporting in some way at some point, is what I gather from this. So as a college student, so remember, he's already a very formed Nazi. According to Bolton, Thompson was a member of the committee to elect FDR and Henry Wallace. At the time, he was also a member of the Friends of New Germany and of the German-American Bund. He was connected with the American Labor Party at college and supporter of Wallace in 1944. So according to Bolton, so there was this, I didn't really talk about this. There was a scandal when he was first in the part of the Navy, and then when he was in the Marines, there was a scandal. He was kicked out, and there was a trial of some sort. I'm not sure exactly what happened there. It is implied that he was discharged from the Marines as a sexual deviant, something like that. Some I guess gay stuff is implied there, but also specifically that he was spanking some like Marines or something like that.
Okay. Okay.
Nice.
So he was also a Heinlein fan, I guess, later in life.
Yeah. But he had some support. He had some support. I think Admiral Byrd from the Hyperborean mission, if you remember, in Antarctica, came to witness on his to be a witness in the trial on his behalf, or gave a statement how he's a great guy or something like that.
This is so weird.
But who supported him during the trial were a lot of Stalinists and leftists, because actually what Bolton says that happened was that he was persecuted as a leftist in the military. Because of these connections with the American Labor Party and Henry Wallace and some communist adjacent circles. So he was in 1948. Thompson was actually, according to Bolton, he was on the founding meeting of Wallace's Progressive Party. And he, for some years, like, dedicated a lot of time working for Wallace, according to Kerry Bolton. So in the military, he was seen as a communist sympathizer. And FBI claims that he was a member of the National Council of American-Soviet Friendship. So, as I said, the left Stalinist press supported him as a kind of a persecuted leftist at the time. But, of course, the guilty verdict was upheld even after these some attempts to overturn it. Allegedly, he was also very friendly with a black Marine called John Rubder. According to Bolton, this was the first black Marine. I don't know if this is true. And in the files, it is said that both Thompson and this guy, his friend alleged, were like criticizing the segregation in the military or something like that. It's very weird.
Man, leave it to one of these motherfuckers. Like, okay, I feel like there's like a meme here, between him and, let's say, Dan Burroughs and how he got fucking disciplined in the military. Like, H.K. Thompson gets disciplined in the military because of some fucking obscure post-Spenglerian analysis of the Soviet Union. And fucking Dan Burroughs gets it for wanting to eat the fucking bird that's their mascot, is the difference between these kind of rank and file A&P types and, the brains.
Yeah.
Oh, I tried to eat the dog.
Yeah. According to Bolton, he was also a member of the American Institute for Marxist Studies and was an aide to Congressman Vito what is the name?
Vito Spatafor?
I guess Vito Marcantino,
Pretty close, though.
was a congressman who was a member of the American Labor Party and wrote speeches to him. So I think how Bolton kind of explains this, he doesn't say it explicitly, but I think it is implied that this connection with either Stalinist or like Soviet supported leftists had something to do with his work to help imprison Nazis. That basically he made life easier to them by doing some things that were like pro-Soviet to some degree, right? And helping people who were affiliated more directly with the Soviet Union is what I get from this.
But this is all coming from Kerry Bolton. Oh.
This is coming from Kerry Bolton, yes, it's true. But I mean, he would get this, like I mentioned Donitz, but also like I think Field Marshal Kesselring also, I think, wrote to him to thank him for what he did for him in Spandau prison and so on. So it seems that, he certainly had some influence. Also, interestingly, Thompson wrote to President Truman to ask for clemency for the Rosenbergs, and he also offered his legal assistance to Alger Hiss as well. So yeah, It's strange things. At the same time, Thompson wrote to Hoover and offered to help the FBI investigate various communist groups that he had information on, and provided, according to Kerry Bolton, some 200 documents to Hoover on communists.
Well, Hoover was hero to many on this show.
Yeah. So it might be interesting to see like who are the communists that he informed the FBI on. Maybe they were like Trotskyist affiliated groups, or like some, who knows? It would be interesting to see.
I wonder if that's available anywhere.
I was thinking that too, yeah.
Yeah, declassified in any way.
So Bolton also has like a really wild claim about Thompson. That's in the 70s. He was a mercenary in Rhodesia.
Okay.
And that he used the name Brigadier Paul D. North while fighting there. And that he had a fake Canadian passport while doing that.
All right.
Before he died, according to Kerry Bolton, Thompson financed a lot of American right-wing politicians, and he gave money to Oliver North, Jesse Helms, David Duke, and Pat Buchanan.
Great. That's a perfect score.
For giving a lot of money to the Republicans, Kerry Bolton says that H.K. Thompson was awarded membership in the Republican Party's Presidential Legion of Merit.
That's awesome. I hope that's true.
Okay. So that is something that we could double check on.
Yeah. So for the end of the episode, I want to connect it with some newer things, just briefly.
Okay.
This will be the end. So there is this person who was a friend of H.K. Thompson, and is a woman, I think, living in New York City, but certainly connected with that scene over there, who's still active, is in her 60s now, I think, and she uses the pseudonym Margot Metroland, and is among that's a name of a fictional character that she assumed, and she's affiliated with the Countercurrents publishing house and writes a blog on their website. Often writes about exactly figures like we discuss now. Like she has a text about Vice, a few texts about Yockey, a text about H.K. Thompson. She's like an American elitist Nazi nerd. And as I said, she was friends with H.K. Thompson. And I have somewhere downloaded like a Nazi podcast interview with her. She was also friends with Carto and with Pierce and so on. She was doxxed, like I think in 2016 and something like that, by New York City Antifa a long time ago. Her actual name is either Margot Darby or Margot Sheehan. She's like a professional person who worked for many companies like Penguin, Random House, Citigroup, American Express Publishing, New York Times, worked a lot of things, like a lot of companies. Seems like a pretty wealthy person and so on. But what's interesting that when she was, doxxed by New York City Antifa, it was when she had a close connection with Richard Spencer. And what was the name of the fucking group? National Policy Institute. She facilitated and was present and at the meetings of the National Policy Institute. I will give you, like, there is a YouTube clip when she was confronted by some activists outside of the conference of the National Policy Institute. So you can, it's a very brief video of this confrontation. You can get from that a little bit what kind of a person she is. She has this kind of a Cruella kind of vibe to her. Completely in how she looks and how she sounds and everything.
Don't start anything with me, boy.
So that's like someone who really comes out of this lineage of American fascism and who directly connects, people like Richard Spencer and his group with that older times. What's also interesting about her was that she was also friends with Adam Parfrey of the Feral House.
Yeah.
And that whole scene, which is now called the Abraxas scene, let's say, which I think we'll talk about more in the future. So that's another interesting connection. There's also there was a guy, a Nazi called Keith Steinle, I think is his last name. He was good friends with Margot, and he was very closely affiliated with the Institute for Historical Review, and he was a friend and admirer of H.K. Thompson. There is a very long transcript of an interview that Keith Steinle did with H.K. Thompson, which you can find. It's a long interview about Yockey, essentially, because Keith Steinle originally wanted to write a biography of Yockey, which he never did. Steinle died in 1992 because of some complications in connection to AIDS. He was I don't know if he was a closeted gay man or a bisexual, but he had relationships with women, but was also very sexually active with men, is what also Margot says in one of the interviews or texts about her friend Keith Steinle. Keith Steinle was also a good friend with Adam Parfrey and also connected with people like Michael Moynihan. And I think at some point even played music with them.
Wow.
Okay. Or something like
that.
Wow. And was a friend of H.K. Thompson and kind of an admirer of him, I would say. This interview that he did with H.K. Thompson starts with a joke question, which is how many times did you have sex with Yockey or something like that? And then I don't know, H.K. Thompson jokingly says that he refuses to answer or something like that.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. It's not how I expected this to end, but yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. That's more or less what I had to say.
Well, that's all, folks. We started with Lindsay Lohan and ended with who's having sex with Francis Parker Yockey.
Which could just very easily be a beautiful Netflix Christmas film by Lindsay.
I absolutely agree, yeah.
I think there's a lot of moments in this story that made me say, aw,
You sold me on it, Fritz.
Yeah. Man, this guy's he's really hitting. I said it before, but he's playing the whole song of this arc. The only things that I'm kind of missing maybe are maybe more of an Italian connection and some publishers and stuff like that.
But I mean, this is he is one of these Nazis in this arc that kind of lived forever, right? I mean, he died in the 2000s. So of course he spans the entire kind of duration of this arc.
He was 82 when he died, so he was old, but not extremely old. But the thing is that he became a Nazi very young. So
he was alive at a very important time period. This arc.
His life feels longer. That whole time. His life feels like it's over a century somehow because of that.
No, because it's like Cardo too in that respect, where they were active in the early days. I mean, he's active even before Cardo. But yeah, once you get active in those circles very early on and you live that long, then you kind of connect with everyone at some point or another.
Yeah. I don't know. He seems very interesting, in these connections. Although there is a possibility that he was just, a mystifier, that he was pretending that he's more interesting than he is actually.
Oh yeah, we know.
Also, it surprised me at all. Yeah. I mean, a lot of these people do invent elaborate stories and biographies for themselves too.
Yeah.
And, spout a bunch of bullshit too that then gets repeated by other Nazis. So, yeah.
What a mystery. What a man of mystery.
Well, leave it to Ray to spread some holiday cheer for all of us here in Tenet Pod.
Yeah. I also kind of I'm starting to wonder actually if Ray has some kind of like a truffle hound type sense for JFK links.
Absolutely.
I don't think he sought him out this time, but they turn up. That sniffer, you smell them out.
They're very specific. They're always to the same group.
Yes. Okay. Well, that might be why. No. It's a sampling problem.
And ufology too.
Yes.
Made a surprise appearance in this.
But shit. whenever we get to the Americans, one of them is somehow involved in that field.
I mean,
for sure.
This guy actually wasn't. He never spoke about UFOs. But the thing is that
he's like a background figure in this.
Yeah, he was in this
story.
mission. There's like an important thing in like ufology specifically connected to Nazis, and it's kind of fascinating. That's really not. I never saw that anyone made a direct connection with him specifically. But,
yeah, fucking wild. All right, good lore.
So I guess at the end of the arc, once we do our kind of recap RPG, I'm expecting there to be some sort of subterranean Antarctic Hyperborean base that includes H. Keith Thompson.
I have been wanting us to live in Antarctica for like 2 years now. You will hear no argument from me. But that's it's always up to the players. That's not true. I railroad you guys like a motherfucker. All right, let's get out of here then and ponder this guy. Mysterious man he may be, not mysterious though, a piece of shit, and that's something that you can't cover up. I mean, that smell's gonna come through.
Yeah. I'm also somehow fascinated by his connection with Lawrence Dennis.
Me too.
Like, I would like to know like more about what the fuck was going on there. But
yes, yeah. All right. Well, see you guys later. Merry Papist Christmas.
Yeah,
and we got something for the new year coming, but I ain't gonna tell you shit about it because I got a week, so I'm gonna do what I do. All right. See you guys on the other side.
Right. Later.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey there, all you free people enjoying your free episodes from The Empire Never Ended. Maybe scoot on over to patreon.com/tenepod and become a patron. We publish 3 additional premium episodes there alongside the 2 freebies each month. We're on Twitter too, also at Tenepod, but our Patreon is really where it's at. See you there, maybe?